Kia ora, everybody. I'm talking with a transposed Kiwi, Kid Mulligan. Great last name, rather. Turns out you've got the same Mulligan as I've got in me. And what have you been doing this morning?
I have been preparing for a night away on a friend's property about 2 hours north of Melbourne. It's a great friend of mine from here, and I've stayed on that property in the past. I had 3 months there this time last year, or a little bit earlier in the year. So it's a really peaceful place, and I'm just dying to get out there this week. I've had a hectic week with work, and ready for a bit of a country change.
Nice, man. And how did you sort of come across getting a country friend? Because listening to Hunting Camp Down Under, you sort of grew up having good access to a farm. What's it like to be getting back out on the farm?
Fantastic. I've been really fortunate. There's so many things since I started my business, Modern Pirate, where I've connected with such a broad range of people and lots of different industries and businesses, and a heap of really good friendships that have developed from that. And this guy that's got this property, he was one of my first stockists of my brand. So I had one product when I started, and I was walking around not really knowing what I was doing, knocking on doors and hoping someone would buy it off me. And this guy was an Irish guy with a fantastic salon and barber shop within the salon, who took it on board. And over the years we developed a friendship, and he's got this weekend property. It's his wife's family's property. It's about 500 acres, I think. And right on the Golden River, stunning place, lots of deer, good fish in the river. And so he's got a little cabin there, and then they've got a main house that they rent out or they use for family weekends. And he was really generous when I'd had some health issues, which we'll probably touch on at some point. I was going through a stage where I was like, I just feel like I need to go and chill the F out somewhere. So he offered me the cabin on the property, and I spent 3 months there. It was fantastic. So I do a little blast out there every couple of weeks and spend a night with him. He's a bit of a mad Irishman, Stephen. So it's very entertaining, and it's cool. It's very cool.
Nice, and the sun's coming in on the right angle. You can see the ginge in the beard. I've got plenty of Irish in me. Mulligans, O'Connors, McNamara's, it's all there.
Sure.
What did you used to do on the farm back in New Zealand?
The farm, we actually lived in town. We lived in a little town, Tikawiti, but my grandparents had the farm out of town at Pew Pew. So my uncle and cousins all lived on the farm. And we just spent a lot of time out there growing up. All our school holidays were on the farm. And even in Tikawiti, our house was right backed onto farmland. So it was very, sort of outdoors, and, possum hunting and rabbit shooting and pigs and all the rest of it, all the usual New Zealand childhood adventures.
I'm about the same. We grew up sort of semi-rural and backed onto people that had a little bit of farmland and had larger farms in the area and bush and stuff, and we just used to climb the trees. And although Mum and Dad have sold the house, I remember being there a wee while ago and looking up at these macrocarpa trees that were probably 50 metres high and thinking, shit, I could have died up there climbing to the top.
It's a 4x2 from the tree houses.
Yeah, man. So what was that one product that you started off with?
So my brand, Modern Pirate, it's hair products, and I started in 2014, and I don't have a background in hair industry or barbering. I just thought I saw a bit of a gap in the market for something, and there's this big sort of hipster barbershop movement that was really blowing up, and there wasn't a lot of products out there. There was one brand, Australian brand, that was really dominating, and a lot of imported brands at the time. So through friends that had barber shops, I discovered that they were having a lot of issues with importing products from the US that they wanted to stock, or finding the right brand that fitted their shop. There's a lot of products out there that were still very much salon focused, female focused. I just had an idea to do something and try and keep it as clean as possible, which became a little bit of a challenge, to balancing functionality with natural, more sort of natural, cleaner focused ingredients. But yeah, long story short, got through, had this first product created, and I just went out knocking on doors with one product, which was ridiculous, really, because most stores they need a range of products with some variety in them. But fortunately, I just got on a little bit of a roll, and a couple of key places took it, and I managed to sort of slowly build off that, introducing more products. And so that first product was the blue product in the range. I don't know if I put that in your box, but yeah, it's just a water-based styling product. And that's kind of the appeal of the brand, I guess, at the moment is, or these barber-focused products, is products that are a little bit cleaner, easy to wash out, not heavy and oily, so you don't get this kind of build-up and residue, which a lot of the kind of waxy traditional brands sort of had in their range.
Yeah, mate, you've just sparked something for me. I was a Dex waxer for a long period of time.
Yeah, me too.
And being a swimmer, Dex wax was horrific because your goggles would just end up coated in the stuff, and then you couldn't see. And
I was the same. I was surfing. It's all right if you're surfing and you want to still look all right when you walk up the beach and there's a bit of talent lying around. You don't really like to wash out, so it's got its place in there.
Yeah. What do you think about this sort of barbershop renaissance? Like, I've had a yarn to you on Instagram about a few of the things that I would love to do, and myself and another Invercargill local, Eddie Dawkins, who's a keen cyclist, and he's a bit more like you. He's full on barbershop sort of hipster style. He's got not just the haircut but the tattoos as well, and rides a chopper, and he's fully into it. And we've talked about how cool it would be to open a barbershop. What do you think it is about the actual idea of a place where blokes go, talk, get their hair cut the way they want, and if they've got a beard, they can get it trimmed, and it's almost like pampering for guys, but without the, I don't know, the pink.
Yeah, I think it's a great environment. It's there's a lot of diversity within that barbershop movement as well, and there's lots of little places now that are a bit more, you've got a crossover kind of vibe. They sort of have a salon feel, but they're very barber focused and a bit cleaner and more industrial looking. Mm-hmm. And then there's the other end of the spectrum where you've got this very traditional sort of dapper gentleman kind of vibe. And I think there was a lot of that around when I first started, and that extreme end's probably not the end that I resonate with as much. I wanted something that I didn't really want to pigeonhole my brand into, okay, this is just a traditional reference of a product that's going to fit into a dapper gentleman kind of vibe. There's a lot of that in the market, branding wise and and store wise. So my vibe was, I want to access that. I still want to be relevant in those spaces, but I want to have something with a little bit more of a contemporary feel to the product and a contemporary feel to the actual branding, so that there's more crossover with lifestyle stuff, or a broader audience, not just targeting that sort of tattooed biker, slick back looking kind of barber dude. But yeah, I mean, I enjoy all aspects of it. There's lots of really cool little niche shops and people, and diversity within it, which is cool. So it's been a fun journey.
And so, how have you approached sort of product development and then that diversification? You've done a few collaborations using your brand. What do you sort of what drives that?
On the product development side, I've tried to be a little bit ahead of the curve with some of the trends, and a lot of the time it's just guesswork. But I've kind of been lucky a couple of times with the products that I've developed. Initially, the products were really wet, sort of slick, shiny style products, and that was the trend for a lot of years. And then it started sort of moving away to these dry and matte products. And fortunately for me, I had a couple of those in the range quite early on, just as that trend came through. So I got momentum before some of the big sort of multinationals that I was dealing with, competing against. So I think product development, it's hit or miss. It's finding something that, for me, I always look at it, am I focusing on a consumer or am I focusing on my wholesale trade? And I think there's two kind of avenues there. Like there's products that are probably a little bit more easier to put in front of a consumer. And then there's other stuff that's much more trade focused, where it's potentially going to be used in the store, but maybe not something that someone's going to take home and use every day. So yeah, it's just finding that balance in there. And, primarily for me, like 90% of the business is trade. The consumer side of it's definitely growing really quickly. So I'm just trying to make products that function well in the store, and are just really sort of no-brainer, easy to use stuff. Not complicated for people to take home. And it sounds ridiculous, it's just a hair product, but there's a lot of products out there that, they're just heavy and waxy. And, if you don't emulsify it properly or put it in the right way, then, you can get this kind of clumpy look and build up. And so, yeah, just don't overcomplicate it and keep the formulas as clean as possible. And, hopefully people like it and get behind it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the big companies, and of course, a lot of the sort of care products have one of the massivest companies in the world's behind them. Things like Johnson and Johnson. They produce tons of stuff. As sort of being a competitor, how difficult is it to stay in your niche, but at the same time look at something like that could just copy you straight away with massive scale?
I'm not so concerned about the copying or replicating of products. Like there's not a lot of the products out there, there's very little between them. Like the formulation basis of a lot of the bigger commercial brands, quite similar, and then the functionality gets layered into it with other techniques or ingredients. But for me, my biggest challenge is, like I'm tiny, I'm a one-man operator. I've got, quite a big network of people around me that facilitate the growth and what I do. I outsource my warehousing and manufacturing and all the logistics, accounting. So, it's a lot to oversee, but it just means I don't have to have, staff and warehousing and everything in-house. But for me, it's a bit of a catch-22. Like there's a perception of the brand that it's much bigger than what it is, which is fantastic. But, when I get into some of these bigger channels or bigger customer relationships, I'm sitting on the shelf at the same retail price point as these multinationals who are just throwing, a huge amount of promotional stock and discounting and deals at these guys to just to be on the shelf. So that's where it becomes challenging, where the expectation is that I can support the brand in the same way as a, $50 million annual turnover company. And I'm like, hey, I'm just working from the kitchen table here. I don't really have the resources for that, but it's fantastic. Like, the flip side of it is, people are resonating with the brand and doors are opening and opportunities are coming, and the growth is steady and organic and manageable to a certain degree. So yeah, it's a real journey. Like it's so much more than just a business, having a business. Since I started this, there's just a myriad of things that come out of it, relationships, learning about yourself, dealing with stress. It's a really challenging but rewarding experience.
Nice. You said about that growth aspect, and that was one of the things I was interested in, this diversification. How do you temper that sort of itch to go, oh, well, we could take things over here, but then, like you say, I'm a one-man band, and if I spread myself too thin, am I going to take away from the core product? What's that sort of collaboration opportunity sort of stuff like?
Yeah, so for me, there's another element to that as well. It's my lifestyle. So I recently had an opportunity to sell a major share of the business to a big multinational, and part of that was a commitment for 3-year employment as well with me. And I didn't end up going through it because I just couldn't face rocking up somewhere 9 to 5. And, so other things obviously around it as well weren't right, but, it was very flattering, and it was a really good experience to go through that sort of period of negotiation, and just realizing, just having some really deep thoughts about, why did I start this, and why am I doing it? And is it to make money, or is it to make some money and support, my lifestyle and focus on my health and relationships? And, for me, that is the priority. So, at the expense of probably being in a better financial position, I've sacrificed opportunities to maintain my lifestyle. But it's a gut feeling, and it's a gut feeling from day one that I started, that I've really tried to be true to, and really good things are coming out of it. So next stage is, there's some bigger distribution channels that are opening up where it can probably allow me to just focus on the actual brand, not so much of the day-to-day running around and a lot of communication. So I can kind of alleviate a lot of that side of my time, and just focus on the stuff that I enjoy, which is building the brand and working on these collaborations to create content and broaden the market, the exposure in different markets. So but it's there's lots of opportunity and lots of growth still. So not even scratching the surface, really.
Yeah. What's the power play like with that? They're waving, cash, logistics, advertising, all those little things, like you say, that take your or probably what you want to focus on, and they're going to say, "Oh, we'll take care of it if you can just run the business." And it's kind of like, well, yes. This doesn't fit.
Yeah, it's still, there's still, lots of challenges around that. It's, fortunately, everything's pretty close to where I am. Like I live in St Kilda. I've got my manufacturing facility within sort of 20 minutes from here. The warehouse is 20 minutes away. So I think it's a really good solution. It means I can free up I can actually work from anywhere I want to. If I want to go and spend some time somewhere for a few weeks and, work remotely, then I've got that option. It's been the target, and it's been the goal right from the beginning, was to build it and then get into some of these bigger global distribution channels, and not have that sort of one-on-one direct communication with every person that buys my product. Because it's great, but it's just a lot to manage.
Absolutely. And so you said St Kilda there. Does that mean you follow the Swans, or you're a bit like our common like Andy and stay away from the footy?
Still have not, in I don't know how many years, 20 years, watched the game of AFL.
Nice. Yeah,
it doesn't resonate with me. I think it's the Kiwi blood is too strong. I appreciate the guys. I don't know what team it is, but they train at the gym I train at. I wouldn't know who they are. It's just a bunch of fit guys that get in the sauna at the same time and jump in the ocean at the same time. And every now and then someone says, maybe it's Essendon team, the training there as well. So I assume it's them.
Yeah, nice. No, I loosely follow Carlton. But I can't say I've actually watched too many of their games. And you're right, I appreciate the athleticism, but trying to play that complicated game, it's a game where you can't explain it to somebody. That makes it pretty difficult. Although rugby's also a little bit like that. It's like, well, there's a ruck and this happens and this could happen. And
for sure.
It's hard, mate. And so last weekend you checked out those Melbourne Markets. How handy are they to you, and what is it that drives you there, man?
Yeah, it's the Paran Markets. That's my kind of go-to. If I'm not away doing something, camping or outdoors on the weekend, Sunday morning I'll get up and I'll walk. It's about 30 minutes walk from my place to the markets, and it is insane. They're open, I think they're open 4 days a week. But yeah, really fantastic seafood section. great organic butcher. That's all the staff are Kiwis. That's quite funny. So I've got a really good relationship with those guys. I'm the weirdo that's coming in asking for lamb's brains and liver and all the offal that's stashed out the back. And really fantastic vegetables. But the thing that I really like is a small stand. There's an old guy there that's I don't know who he's working with, but it's some medicinal mushroom grower in Australia. So he's got a heap of fresh medicinal mushrooms. The lion's mane is insane. It's like a huge, big, white, spongy-looking fungi. And so I always go and grab 500 grams of that and a couple of other bits and pieces, and smash a few oysters and get a bit of liver on the way home. It's good.
Yeah. I've followed another Melbourne guy who's a Kiwi, and his name escapes me. His handle's DP Chef, and he's been out getting...
Yeah, I follow him too. I didn't realise he's a Kiwi.
Yeah. And he's been out getting morels and turkey tails. Are there any of those that you're going to stumble across this weekend?
Yeah, I was out on this property 2 weekends ago, and we were looking for them. For a few other varieties as well, but mainly the morels. But I saw his post actually, and then I was at the market the next day and saw fresh morels, so I bought some and cooked them that night. So that got me interested, his post. So I'll have a look this weekend. I'll definitely have a look. There could still be a few around.
Yeah, my only experience with mushrooms in Australia was, and I was lucky because a couple of weeks before we left, we came across this one that didn't look the same as what we'd been eating, and it had sort of a white ring around the bottom of it. And I looked it up, and it said that in New Zealand it shouldn't be poisonous, but if it's got green spores, then it is. And so I was like, it's not worth it. And then sure enough, I was driving, I used to drive between Ballina and Casino, which was sort of back roads through macadamia groves and avocado groves and stuff. And then these massive white things on the side of the road. And I was like, awesome, some mushrooms, and pulled over. But no, these ones had big green spots on them. I was like, oh no, we'll leave those behind.
My friend who I'm going out to the property, he's really interested in the fungi and mushrooms and whole mycelium system. He's right into Paul Stamets and his work. So he's always looking for different varieties of stuff out on his property. And it's when you actually consciously have a look around and think, okay, I'm just going to actually take notice of what's growing on the ground. There is literally thousands of different varieties. It's really, really diverse. It's cool.
Yeah, and I think that's something that is really good about getting out in nature. Like so many people, as living in the city, or Hastings is a large town, people come into me and kind of go, I've got these weird symptoms, weird sinusy, headachy, and I sort of say to them, well, there's lots of spores around, there's pollen around. They're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, have you just looked at the grass at the moment or whatever?
Yeah, and I think a lot of these spores or microspores that are coming off, plants and trees, a lot of them do have benefits for us with our response to them. The hormone, response that we get to inhaling and breathing or absorbing those spores, and a little bit of a dip in our immune system and then rebounding from it. So I know in Japan they have gardens that are specific to cancer patients, where they encourage people to spend, I think it's 30 minutes a day in these gardens near the hospitals, just for that reason, that they see an upregulation of their immune system just from being exposed or being out in the trees and in nature. So it's really fascinating, all that side of, the benefits of being outside and in environments that, are a little bit more raw and wild. And it's, it's fascinating.
Yeah, and with the hormesis, I know you're sort of big into breath and movement, but what's your relationship with the cold?
The cold is something I can't remember where I was. I must have been, I think I was in San Francisco. I had about 3 years where I was splitting my time between Melbourne and San Francisco. And I came across, I think I picked up a book first. I can't remember the author, but it's a guy that wrote the book about Wim Hof. And around that same time, I listened to a podcast where Wim was talking to Joe Rogan. and I was like, this is really interesting stuff. So I think I went and bought like 3 bags of ice and loaded up the bath, and the water was freezing out of the tap in San Francisco anyway. And I went through one of the breath cycles. He had, I think his app had just been released, so just followed the technique on the app. Really basic, probably not doing it correctly, but just had this really crazy experience where, yeah, almost like a hallucination or psychedelic kind of visuals that came from the breath work, and then like amazing, just a really tranquil kind of peaceful feeling afterwards, which was really refreshing. And then I did the ice, jumped in the bath and froze, lasted about 2 minutes. And but yeah, again, getting out, I just really noticed that there was this peace that was coming over me. And it was at a time where, you know, my life, I mean, for those 3 years of that travel was a really stressful time, early days of getting the business going. Pretty tricky relationship. I had a partner in America at the time, and yeah, just a lot going on. So I kind of just, yeah, it was really refreshing. I was like, there's something in this. And I was quite shocked to find that, you know, it wasn't some external form of stimulation or something that I was taking that was making me feel like that. It was something that was within me. And that's, I think that was the most shocking part of it. It was like, wow, okay, with, you know, we do have something that's, whether it's a primal or something that's within our DNA that we're igniting or tapping into, that we can access at will. So yeah, that from that day onwards, I just built it into my routine, and it was something particular, especially the last 2 years. I've been every day. I've done some form of cold therapy, whether it's, you know, every day is cold showers, morning and night. And, you know, living here in St Kilda, I'm right by the ocean, so been a little bit harder over the winter months to do it first thing in the morning, but at some point over the day I'll get in the ocean. And yeah, so yeah, my day, it's always cold showers in the morning, followed by like a small sort of 15-minute yoga routine, like a salutations to the sun kind of flowing routine. And then I'll sit down and I'll do, for the years I've done the Wim Hof technique. So usually 4 rounds of the breath work, and then lead into a really peaceful meditation state after that for about 15 minutes. I've just recently kind of mixed it up a little bit because I feel, you know, there's quite a bit of sympathetic nervous system activity being sparked, like first thing in the day. So getting up, getting in the cold, that breath work is definitely a sympathetic response from that kind of breath work. And then, you know, coffee straight into work. It's, you know, like you're really kicking into another gear. So what I've been doing, I've just been using it. There's a guy, Brian McKenzie, who's written a book, The Art of Breath. I think he was involved with Kelly Starlett's early on in the CrossFit days, but he's very big on breath work and breath work for performance. And he's just released an app called Shift State, which is insane. It's very, very simple and easy to use. There's 4 different settings that you can select from. So feel alert, feel calm, be present, and fall asleep. So I'm using that now. I've mixed it up, and that's just, you're getting a little bit more sympathetic and parasympathetic response from that breath work in the morning. So yeah, that's it. And yeah, usually at some point of the day, I'll either be, when I go to my local gym is amazing. It's right on the sand in St Kilda, so you can literally walk out of the sauna and the swimming pool area onto the sand and jump in the ocean and do a bit of alternated heat and cold therapy. So that's, you know, that's sort of going on at some point over the day as well.
That's epic. And how does your Aura Ring sort of fit in with what you do first thing in the morning? Does that feedback pretty constant, or are you getting some ups and downs?
Like it's interesting to see. It's it's definitely, you know, my highlight of the morning, seeing what
how do I do
what went on last night. And sometimes it's a bit scary, but it's initially it was a really good reference, and it still is. But I know now that, obviously just with how my body feels, I've got a pretty good idea of what the readiness score is going to be, based on what's happened the day before, how I slept, if I've eaten a bit close to bed. There's a lot of things. If I've had a couple of glasses of wine, sometimes that affects it, sometimes it doesn't. So it's a really good reference. It's definitely been really helpful in how I structure my evenings. I know there's a couple of key things I notice. If I, like I've got these blue blocking glasses, if there's nights that I don't wear them, then I definitely have reduced deep sleep. There's a whole heap of things depending on what I've eaten, how late I've eaten, how much time I've been exposed to the computer over the day. If I had any sunlight, sort of AM sunlight, I can notice there's a change. So, and where I am environmentally, like when I'm out in the bush, it's like sometimes I feel like I haven't slept that well, but my deep sleep's through the roof. So, breaking down that those sleep cycles is really interesting. And I think there's you can draw a lot of little key indicators of, just your general health based on that, and particularly the HRV element to it. When I've had a big week of training or overdone it, I definitely see it's like, oh, might be time to just back off. But having said that, I think, an interesting thing that Brian McKenzie said, or it might have been Kelly Starlett, said that, it's great to use the data from these devices, but at the end of the day, it's your desire to train should override anything. So there's definitely days that from my data, it would indicate that I'd need a rest day, but I just want to do something. I feel like I need to do something physical for my mental well-being, or, it's a nice day, or I just want to get out. So I think there's some benefits to overriding that as well. And again, it's kind of that hormetic response to stress. If there's days that you don't want to do it. If you push through it, then you can become stronger for riding through some of those harder days as well.
Yeah, so it's sort of the flip side of what my mate, who has now just got an Oura ring, and it's quite handy for him because he's just fallen off a bike at Ironman, and I think he was in Thailand for that, and knocked his head, and so he's obviously making sure that he's sleeping well, which he is, but then he feels like shit and he can't concentrate. But he's got this 5-minute rule, and like you say, the days that you feel a little bit off and you want to make sure that it's not just feeling off, he sort of says, get started for 5 minutes, and if you still feel shit, we'll give up and back it in. But and like you're saying, it's the opposite. You've got this data that says, oh, maybe hold back, but you feel all right and you want to move and get outside, especially. It can be sort of the flip side of that.
And particularly with HRV reading, that's done over a period of, I think it's over a period of 24 hours, but they've got a new function within the app now where you can, I think it's called, it's not activities, it's a moment option. So you select that moment and you've got two choices. I think it's breath work or meditation. So there's a 10-minute timer, and you can go into meditation for 10 minutes, and then you see the change in your HRV just from that 10 minutes of meditation. So you can definitely play around and work, and do things that are going to increase your, your HRV level, and, feel better for it as well.
Do you ever monitor that as you go with meditation, sort of try increase that sort of stuff, or it's something that's sort of too technical to be meditating on?
I would like to. Like, there's so many cool gadgets that I'd love to get if I had, a stack of cash. It's interesting. I find it all really fascinating, all that kind of, biohacking stuff as well. And tracking your data. And it's something that's interesting. For me, it's something I've been really looking into. I had 2 years ago, it's actually 2 years to the day, I had a stent put in. Yeah, crazy. So I've had 15 years of solid exercise and really consistent with my training and routine, a broad range of exercise, lots of time in the outdoors, surfing, a relatively good, like a good diet for most of that time. And then 2 years ago, a little bit longer than 2 years ago, I had a really stressful 3 years really leading into that point. Work and travel and relationship stuff, a lot of a myriad of things that were accumulating. On top of that, I'd been exercising a lot, and I was 3 years I was living in Airbnb, so I was moving around every 6 weeks somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a place in Melbourne, and I woke up one night with a terrible pain sort of up through my chest and into my neck, and I was like, fuck, I think I'm having a heart attack. And I was alone. I was on my own, so it was really stressful going through that. Lasted about 2 hours, and then I finally went back to sleep, woke up in the morning, and I felt fine. I was like, look, it must have just been, something from training. Maybe I pulled a muscle in my chest or something. Got up, went for a run, started kicking in at about 2K mark. And then, it happened every day for about 2 weeks before I went to the doctor.
I'm raising my eyebrows if you're not watching this on YouTube.
It's actually probably a little bit longer than that. I mean, my parents were coming over from New Zealand. I was meeting them in Noosa, so I was driving from Melbourne to Noosa up the coast, and I was surfing every morning and running, and it just kept kicking in. And there were some mornings I was surfing on these back beaches on the coast on my own, getting pain. Probably shouldn't really be doing this. Anyway, long story short, got back to Melbourne, saw my doctor, and he said, you've got to go to emergency right now, because it's obviously something to do with your cardiovascular system. Went in, they did a heap of tests. I hadn't had a heart attack. I had all my blood markers looked fine. Overall, there was nothing that they could sort of pick up. They were like, look, you're fit as anything. You're obviously very healthy. We're just probably going to let you go, but come back tomorrow. Just want to do one more test, which was the stress echo test. And came the next day, did that, and through that they discovered there was a 98% blockage to one artery, which was it was shocking. It was I couldn't really believe it, to be honest. So they scheduled me in the next day to put a stent in, which was, again, for me, I really avoid anything that's kind of medical focused if I can. So I just felt like I was in a situation where I was, I didn't have enough time to assess what had happened and, make any decisions around that procedure or educate myself on it. So I felt quite vulnerable going in to do that, but they assured me that it was something that just had to be done straight away. So they put in a new product, which was a trial. It was still in the trial process. It was a magnesium biodegradable stent. So being 43 at the time, they said it was just for long-term prospects, it was a much better option for someone my age. And essentially, they put that stent in, squeezed the artery open, and over a period of 2 years, your body slowly absorbs that magnesium into the endothelial wall, and in theory, the artery stays open. So they did that, and I flew out like 2 days later to Thailand for a couple of weeks, holiday and work stuff, and the whole time I felt terrible. I had this really just sharp pain in that area, and that pretty much continued for about a 4-month period, and they just could never give me any clarification on why that would be happening. Apparently there's no nerve endings in that area, so it was unlikely they would think that it would be triggering some sort of pain. And so it was really hard to digest that. I still have that after 2 years. Anyway, I got to about the 4 or 5 month mark, and I was in America at the time, and the things started getting really bad really quickly. Like, all the symptoms started coming back. I could hardly walk up the stairs. I was out of breath, a lot of pain, and I made the decision just to get on a flight and get back to Melbourne. And same thing, rushed straight in, and the stent had collapsed. My body had broken it down really quickly, so it collapsed in the artery and blocked off the artery again. So it was really fortunate I got back and got in. So then they went back in and put in a traditional stent, which I've got now. So that was about over 12 months ago now, probably 18 months ago now that happened. And from that point on, I just really decided to make some big changes in my life and really work on managing stress or eliminating any stress that I could eliminate. So it was, there's some tough decisions. I ended the relationship that I was in. Felt like the travel and, the situations around that weren't worth the pressure that it was putting on me. So I did that, changed some of the things that I was doing in the business, how it worked, and went back to New Zealand, spent a month in New Zealand with my mum cooking dinner, which was amazing. So they've got a house on the Coromandel Peninsula at Whitianga. Dad dives, and there's plenty of seafood every day. There's fresh vegetables in the garden, and a really nice home environment. So that was really nourishing to get back there, and I bounced back really quickly. So even a week later, I was running and going to the gym, and spending time on the beach every morning doing my breath work and cold therapy, cold dips in the middle of winter in New Zealand, which looked a bit strange for the passers-by, but
Which wetsuit.
yeah, it's quite funny. Well, I do this morning, part of my morning routine. I do this animal flow movement, and it's the light exposure. Obviously, has a lot of benefits. That AM light exposure is signaling, the cascade of hormone responses in our body, priming us for the day. The actual movement part of it is, we've got these the ability to receive the energy from the earth, and especially when you're on a volcanic beach where the sunlight's on the sand, there's a lot of minerals and in the earth. You're next to the ocean, you've got these negative ions that you're absorbing when you get in the water. So there's just a whole lot of things. It seems like such a simple thing to do, but the physical benefits from it are profound. So by doing that every morning, I've done that pretty much some form of that every morning for the last 18 months. And as a result of that, I've had a huge change in my blood work. My blood work's still not great, but things, just everyday markers, cholesterol, decreasing rapidly, inflammation markers, decreasing. So, just from being in the environment, external environment, somewhere in nature, and tapping into those things, I feel like there's, you're really kickstarting a lot of the healing properties before you have to really consider, introducing other stuff on top of that. So I think if people understood how simple it is to correct or to improve, their day-to-day life, their mental well-being, by just getting outside and putting your bare feet on the ground and, looking at the sun in the morning, then it's such an easy, free way to improve your health. It's too accessible.
Yeah, 100%, man. And so you spoke about the lifestyle intervention there and diet, and you spoke about with Josh Rogers that the keto diet wasn't necessarily the right one for you. What was a sort of marker that you sort of pulled up that maybe a high saturated fat diet wasn't the most ideal?
I think for me, it was the kind of fats that I was consuming and probably over consuming, like the saturated fat sources. I was having a lot of butter, a lot of coconut oil, a lot of fatty meat. Essentially, for most people, they are healthy fats, and I believe they are for me as well. But I think in conjunction with potentially having some endothelial wall disruption, that really high saturated fat intake could potentially be part of the problem. It is not the cause of the problem, of course. There needs to be an underlying infraction within your endothelial wall for the cholesterol to then go to and do what it's supposed to do to heal and to address that issue. So I think that could have been one indicator. And I definitely noticed when I adjusted how I ate. So I moved a little bit away from, like I was doing a Charles Poliquin approach where I was eating for quite a long time, having steak and nuts for breakfast. Mm-hmm. And like mentally and physically, that's the best I ever felt, eating that way. And yeah, so there were things in there that once I kind of tweaked a little bit and went more Mediterranean paleo, still generally a low carb style diet, but just a lot more olive oil as opposed to coconut and butter. And yeah, just, probably a lot more green vegetables, still plenty of meat, but really just really good sources of grass-fed organic beef and wild Atlantic salmon, sardines, all of the good things. But I just noticed my lipid markers, drop very quickly just from that small change. So there's a couple of things obviously there's some genetic things that I probably need to test to confirm that. Mm-hmm. Because in conjunction with that happening, I was having a lot more time in the sun as well. So I'd moved after New Zealand. I decided I was going to Bali. I had nearly 5 months in Bali last winter. So I was working from there. I'd do 6 weeks, then I'd come back to Melbourne for a couple of weeks and spend time with my daughter here and oversee what was going on with the warehousing and manufacturing. And, I probably took my foot off the pedal a little bit with work, but it's, I felt I needed to prioritize, my health at that time. So, the lifestyle I had there was much less stressful. I was in the sun a lot more, and my diet was probably shifted a little bit more towards that Mediterranean style paleo. So there's a couple of things there that could indicate the lipid markers declining. And I've definitely, coming back to Melbourne and being based here, I've probably introduced those things a little bit more, and I have seen a slight increase in those markers again. So it's interesting, but again, I'm probably more stressed living in a city, and there's Wi-Fi and signals blasting around, dirty electricity everywhere as well, and it's hard to really know exactly what is influencing those things sometimes.
What are you following? Are you are you looking as deep as LP-LOA, LDLP, that sort of stuff, or just ratios and levels?
I haven't. I'm not looking at those yet. I've just, interestingly enough, I early on in my introduction to the cold therapy, I did a weekend ice bath at 5 Elements in North Melbourne with Dave O'Brien.
Yeah.
So and then I listened to Dave on your podcast recently and noticed that he's doing the blood chemical analysis courses. So I had a consultation with Dave last week, and that really opened my eyes, and then just put me down even a bigger rabbit hole that I thought I was down, and realized, okay, there's a lot more depth to this than where I'm sort of scratching around on the surface. And a lot of things he brought up were things that I've come across in my research over the last couple of years. But he really puts things into context. So there's a couple of interesting things that he brought up as well that I didn't consider, which could cause these potential endothelial disruptions. And it's a lot of it's stress related. Just high blood pressure from stress. And more blood pumping through the arteries. It's there's potential that you could cause some damage.
It'd be interesting if Dave has some parallel thinking here. I have read somewhere, and I unfortunately can't call up the reference or anything like that, but it was something to do with the fact that as chefs, even non-smoking chefs, their risk for endothelial damage is increased because of the vapor from processed seed oils. Did that parallel thinking ever come up?
No, it hasn't. I haven't actually thought about that.
Yeah. So how long were you chefing for? Obviously, there's a big stress element with chefing as well.
About 20 years. Yeah, probably. Yeah. I left New Zealand on a one-way ticket when I was 17 to London, and I got a job in a restaurant in London through a friend of my mum. Her sister was managing a restaurant, so I pretty much walked into a job washing dishes at 17 in London, and after a year I was making salads, and then a couple of years later I was one of the main chefs. So yeah, since then that has been my sort of underlying trade. I've done a heap of other things along the way as well, but the chefing has always been kind of a base thing that I've either gone back to or I've done in conjunction with other stuff. But I know there's a huge increase in cardiovascular incident with night shift workers. I think like something like 30 to 40%, ridiculous. And I know Rob Wolf did some work with the Nevada police and fire departments, and yeah, the statistics that were coming out of that were crazy. So that's one thing. When I was a chef, I did my last job as a chef. I was working on offshore oil rigs up in the East Timor Sea, month on, month off, and I was doing night shift out there for a lot of years, and that was really taxing. So there's obviously the disruption with your circadian rhythm. We're on an oil rig, an isolated oil rig. There was very little sun light. It was all artificial light. You'd sneak out. If night shift, you had a little window in the morning or the evening to get out and get a little bit of light. So yeah, there's a couple of things there, or there's a lot of things now. At first when it happened, I was like, fuck, how could this happen to me? I'm supposedly fit and young and, thought I was doing all the right things, but, and I couldn't really get any answers from the cardiologists. It was, fantastic care and great people, but they just couldn't really give me any answers or direction. It was just, here's 6 forms of medication to take, and you take these for the rest of your life, and and see you later. So I felt pretty desperate. I didn't really know where to look, and so I reached out to Ben Greenfield in America, and he was amazing. He gave me some really fantastic advice, and he said, look, I think you're definitely someone that could be at risk with, from what you've told me. There's a lot of key things here that, would indicate, why this has happened. And yeah, he just opened my eyes to some alternative ways of looking at it, some alternative study data around some treatments. And yeah, so from there, I just really pushed in deep and done a lot of research myself. And a lot of it, may or may not be relevant, but there's a lot of things now I've kind of pieced together, a bit of a puzzle, and, learning more and more along the way. But I guess I kind of got to a point now where I sort of felt like I've hit a bit of a wall of, all right, what's the next step? How do I stop this from potentially happening again? And I've really focused on my routine and how I've structured my day, my sleep is a priority. Knock back plenty of dates now because I need to go to bed at 9:00. But so it's been really interesting. So seeing Dave has been it's given me a lot of confidence. It's given me a couple of really clear ideas of what the next approach is, and through that, I feel I'm really excited about the next kind of stage, and seeing the results that I believe this will bring.
Yeah. So on that, what's sort of your endpoint outcome when you feel happy about where you're at from that cardiovascular thing? Because the real shit thing about cardiovascular thing is it's kind of even in your case, like, can just sneak up on people and happen.
Yes.
What and you go into that cholesterol thing. Well, it's so much up for conjecture. What's meaningful, and I don't know if you're a follower of Peter Attia, but he had 6 3-hour episodes with Tom Kraus, I think it is, who's a lipidologist, and like I learned so much, but from the end of it, I was like, they actually don't know.
No. Yeah, and there's a lot of, even just the approach. I feel confident that I can mitigate what's happening. I mean, we all have some form of progression of of plaque in the artery walls. Most people in their 40s are going to have 20 or 30% build up in some area. So I think for me, I really want to focus on slowing that right down now, or stopping it from going further. And then considering that there is a stent, that I do have this piece of metal in my artery now, do I need to consider having my lipids a little bit lower? Because there is some form of obstruction in there that potentially that could build up around. And then just being really dialed in with my blood work. But having said that, again, like I saw the private practice guy that did my procedure recently. I presented him with, I've had 2 years of blood work that I've been doing regularly. And he's, looking at my blood work going, look, it's amazing what you've done. You've really turned a lot of things around. And then I go and see Dave. And then Dave kind of looks at this 3 year, 2 to 3 years of blood work that I presented to him. And he's highlighted a heap of things that, when you looked at a single, one of my single blood test panels, everything would seem reasonably normal. But when you kind of put it across a period of time and create this graph, the spikes and drops, there's a lot of irregularities. Mm-hmm. So like this healthy up and down cycle with a lot of these inflammation markers and lipid cycles and hormone responses, you want that sort of frequency of up and down. But with mine, there's these like gradual inclines and then a rapid drop where it stays low. And there's this pattern that highlights a number of things, which a lot of them are coming back to the gut, absorption of food, methylation pathways being impaired, glutathione pathways that are not functioning optimally, and a lot of things that, when you look at the response to those things, that I can really associate with, like energy dumps and ups and downs and, feeling flat, at different times. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. So Dave's kind of given me some real confidence in, okay, let's start here and, get back to the cause of, what could have, potentially sparked some of this stress response in the body. Which is, it's really interesting stuff, that it's definitely outside of the realm of what I've been, exposed to in the, commercial, in the sort of more medical, traditional information. But I think I'm ready yet.
Yeah, and I don't want to yeah, that's what's like you say, from an acute level, medicine is fantastic, but the amount of patients I see, or even just, you go to a supermarket and see what's in front of your eyes, to sit there and unpack it with somebody, I can just sort of scratch the surface and it just all unfolds, and you go, we could be here a while if it was my scope to do something about it. And I try my best within my time and still do an eye exam. But when the eyes are manifesting so much, and it's kind of like, well, it could be this, 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 and then could be all the medications you're taking for it. You just kind of go, wow, where do we begin? And often I'll try to take a simple approach of thinking about insulin or thinking about inflammation, and the amount of European ancestry and Celtic ancestry in this country that's probably contributing to a ton of insulin resistance of all these people scoffing down processed bread, not even properly made bread with good wheat. You just go, well, there's maybe step one.
Yeah, it is in my field. Yeah, I was impressed with listening to some of your approaches to how you're treating your patients, and trying to encourage some of these lifestyle things as well, and looking at what you're doing in a holistic way with the patient as well. I think that's really empowering for people.
Yeah, and I think I'm lucky in terms of when I went through uni with optometry, we did therapeutics, so we have the ability to prescribe stuff, and again, you look at your failures and go, well, what did I get out of that? So I didn't get into optometry straight away, and I went to Otago and tried to carry on with biomedical science doing reproduction, and with that in Otago they linked up genetics. So genetics was like a complete foreign language to me. But that C minus exposure that I got to genetics and a little bit of biochemistry really sort of built up an understanding of, or a little bit of understanding of that. And then I ended up focusing on neuroanatomy and again reproduction. So again, from a hormone perspective and a neurological perspective, and then getting knocked around a couple of times in rugby, again going back to that neurological perspective, to then apply that lens to optometry and go, all I'm dealing with is a little bit of the brain, but what's coming through and coming up, and the lids and all that sort of stuff, tear layers, how people are. It's just it's so broad, and I think you're a miss if you just go, oh well, you don't need glasses.
Yeah. No, I agree, and it's just this everything, understanding that everything plays a role. All of these systems in our body are in sync and speaking with each other, and then they're also then being influenced by the external input, whether it's the environment or what we put in our bodies. And there's some fundamental things there that we can correct at a base level, and then I think see the positive changes from that, because even that within itself is a fantastic start for people. I've had a really great experience with my parents. My mum and dad have always been, they're healthy, they eat home cooked food, they're active people. But my mum's sort of getting late 60s now. My dad's late 60s. Mum's mid 60s. Sorry, Mum. But they were probably, they had some underlying issues. My mum, as she got older, was putting on a little bit of weight, still like in a healthy sort of range, but not feeling good. Always had digestive problems. My dad was a bit the same. He was, he'd sit down every night and have half a dozen beers, and even though he was active and very busy and functioned really well, they probably weren't eating, the right things. It was still very kind of heavy carb-based meals, and so I really put a lot of effort in with them over the last couple of years, and trying to encourage them to just tweak the way they're living as well, how they eat and what they drink. What they do in the mornings as well, getting out and getting a little bit of sun, having the breakfast out on the table outside rather than inside in the kitchen. And they've put a lot of time into it, and the changes in their life has been profound. They've lost so much weight. They're super fit. They do cycling trips and ride their bikes every day. It's like they look 10 years younger than what they did. So, they just embrace the whole thing. My dad he has a couple of beers occasionally now. He'd rather have green tea than a milky coffee or a milky cup of tea in the morning. And it's really cool to see them embrace it and feel like their lives have been reinvigorated. Yep. So I think, just starting with the people around you, like I'm definitely no expert. It's just a hobby for me, and in my interest is exploring all of these things and how food affects us and how environment affects us. And it's definitely a passion of mine. And I feel like if we can embrace a couple of things like that and help a couple of people around us within our close friends or family, then it's just the start of this sort of growing positive movement that we can all be a part of.
Yeah, man, those type of people that have that reinvigoration for life are just, I love it when people like that come in, and then we can talk about
awesome.
talk about the things that flow on from that. And I think Cliff Harvey and I touched on that. It was that house a platform to then follow your passions, and often those ones that have gone, oh, I've done this and this, and now I do this and this and this, like you say, like cycling trips, and people that are off on cruises to weird places like Alaska. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah, it's inspiring. Like, my parents are inspiring me. It's really nice, and I feel like through it all our relationships have improved and we're much closer, and it's a really cool journey.
Yeah, my dad's done a little bit of lifestyle design after all his hard work of raising three boys. He's following his passion as a rowing coach, and with that means going to an international regatta each year, and with that, Mum gets to see parts of the world. And so they've just gone to Florida, and they went right around Florida all the way down to the Keys and right up to the top, and they went to Orlando, and I said, "Oh, you're going to go to Disney World?" And they were, but then they ended up. Funnily enough, the person that was renting our house suggested a different place to go to, and yeah, they went on a couple of roller coasters. One that was they were hanging from, and another one they were going backwards. I was just like, yeah, that's what you want to be doing in your 60s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great to see. It's really good to see.
Yeah. Now, a couple of people have got in common, and also the person that I first found about Modern Pirates from, Eamon Wannington. I've chatted with him a long time, ever since the first issue of Modern Huntsman came out. I was sort of chatting to him, and I sort of said to him, "What's the prompt that I should ask Kent? And don't tell me the story." And he said something about a sambar stag. Were you relaxed, and why were you so relaxed?
That's a bit of that's a bit of a curveball. That one was, I've been fishing. I always felt like I was completely dialed in with nature and the environment, and it was a really random. That was the first time I'd been that close to a deer bow hunting. I was down at the river, this river. It's actually the property that I'm going to this weekend, and I'd driven back to where the house is, and generally you don't see deer in that area. There's like farm paddocks that sort of backs on some bushland. And yeah, I came around and I was like, is that a deer standing down at the end of the paddock? And sure enough, as I got closer, the stag was standing there, was looking at me. The wind was a really good direction, and it just kind of froze. So I was like, it's going to run at any minute. And yeah, I managed to get inside, get my bow, get set up, and come back out. And it was probably 100 meters away. And I put a tree in front of between me and the deer, and just got a stalk into around 55 yards, and got a really clean shot. Hit it. I thought was really good placement, and it jumped the fence and took off into the bush. And yeah, I was probably a little bit excited. First time I'd been in that situation. And I went and I told the story. I actually spoke to Josh Rogers like probably an hour afterwards, going, "Geez, what happened?" But yeah, I probably rushed a little bit to follow it and follow blood trail, and then yeah, I think I must have bumped it. I heard it sort of take off again, and yeah, I spent hours. I spent a lot of time trying to track that deer, and yeah, I didn't find it. So it was actually a really emotional and upsetting experience that's haunted me since. I hope that the deer survived and lived another day. But yeah, it was amazing, and it was such a huge adrenaline rush and lots of emotions going on. But yeah, it was not the result I wanted. So it was a pretty crazy experience. So a lot of hours that night in the bush. So there you go, Eamon. That's the
and I can sympathise, and I'm sure Josh sympathise and Eamon sympathise with you, because that is exactly my first story. I at my mate's farm, we're up on a little knob, and we saw a little mob of spikers, and my mate said, "You go first, and I'll go second." And sure enough, I've got a 7mm Rem mag, so the impact knocked the guy over, and I watched it, and I was like, sweet, well, there's still more deer here, we'll get another one. And then it came back to, right, we'll go pick up these deer, and it was gone. And same thing, that it was just the impact knocked it over, but it must have been a pass through, and the deer got up and walked away. And again, it still haunts me, but I hope that it was just sort of behind the shoulder and carried on fine. And probably the other person I talked to was Andy Ross, and that might be the same story that he was asking me about. He said, "What's your blood tracking skills like?"
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually seeing Andy's coming out with me tonight, actually, to the bush, so that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
It's haunted me that losing that deer as well. And when I spoke to Josh about it the next day, I'd messaged him afterwards, and he said, "Look," "it's just one of those things. You'll learn to really slow down." And he said, "You got to give it some time, especially if it's maybe you didn't hit it in the right spot." And he said they're very sturdy animals. They're used to stabbing each other with their horns. So yeah, he said it just happens, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and deer are very fast to close up wounds and recalcify things, and like
Yes.
having that knowledge, somewhat makes you feel better, but then at the same time, injuring an animal makes you feel disgusting.
Yeah, heartbreaking. Yes.
Yeah. And so you obviously got to that point in your first time lining one up. Something that we had a conversation with Andre Alapati, who's well experienced. He was talking to another guy, Kieran Island, who's just started bow hunting, and he's got to the point where he gets in full draw and then can't let go because being an experienced hunter, he has that thought in the back of the mind of, I want to make this effective. Do you think that's sort of holding over you at the moment, or are you happy with the conversations you've had to move forward?
No, I mean, I definitely, at the time, I felt really confident with what I was doing, and I've been shooting like really cleanly at 60, 70 yards. That's when I was spending time on that property. So I felt confident with that. But after that experience, I've definitely thought, I've reassessed what I would do in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And, being eager to get my first deer, I still don't think it's worth sort of pushing that boundary.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely something that I would, having, going through, if I had to go through that again, I'd probably hold back.
Yeah. And so what was the draw of going to a bow over rifle hunting, or just the fact that you're in Australia and it's bloody tough to get a rifle?
To be honest, I haven't done. I mean, when we were kids, we were rifle hunting. I was duck shooting a lot, shooting rabbits. My brother was deer hunting and shooting pigs a lot. But for me, the rifle hunting wasn't really an appeal. I guess in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, part of the bow hunting thing ties into my health stuff as well, and having an avenue to get out into nature more, and also becoming a little bit more conscious about how I'm living my life and the choices that I'm making. So a big part of that obviously is where I'm getting my food from. Where does that food come from? What's that food going to do in my body? So I'd been drawn to this ancestral health philosophies and particularly around diet for quite a while. So an extension of that was okay, how can I access getting my own food at whether it's in the ocean, spearfishing, or getting out into the bush in Victoria. So at the time that was sort of floating around, and I ended up hearing Adam Greentree on a podcast with Rogan, and around the same time Shane Dorian. Mm-hmm. So really Shane Dorian, his lifestyle really resonates with me. I'm a surfer as well, and I've known of Shane for years and years. So seeing what he was doing with his family and how he was living in Hawaii, I thought it was really, really cool. So I just randomly, I went into a bow shop one day when I was back in Melbourne and picked up a bow and had a shot, and I was like, oh, I've got to do this. There's something going on here. So yeah, I bought the bow and then started going to an archery club and learning how to use it. And then around that time, I linked up with a guy that I taught when I was, before Modern Pirate, I was teaching surfboard manufacturing at a facility in Melbourne. And we're doing weekend courses. And a guy came through that I developed a friendship with, and I learned that he was bow hunting. So he invited me out and just kind of showed me around and took me to some really cool spots. And so my interest started developing from that. And then I connected with Adam through social media and ended up meeting Adam and his wife and family in Newcastle, and went out for breakfast with them one day and had a great chat. That was awesome. They're really lovely people. And then through that, through following Adam, I came across Eamon. And the same thing, we'd sort of developed a friendship, and I'd spent some time with him around that time as well. And Eamon's parents have got a beautiful property in Victoria. So when Eamon was down one weekend, he said, hey, come up and spend a weekend on the farm and we'll go hunting. And it was awesome. And so we just developed a really close friendship since then. And whenever he's down, I'd shoot up there, and he's got a beautiful family farm and a great sort of paddock to plate restaurant that his mum and dad run. And yeah, it's a really cool environment. His cousin Gordy lives next door, is a really keen hunter as well, awesome hunter. So he's been a, really big influence as well, really helpful. And he's the guy that puts the meat on the table. If we don't get anything with the bow, he'll the rifle out and make sure that we don't go home with with the chili's been not chock-a-block, So that's the connection to Eamon, and from there, I've just self-taught really. I'm just sort of going out a lot on my own, and the deer. Like I've been fortunate in Victoria. There's a lot of deer. So pretty much every time I go out, at some point, either bump a deer or I get close to a deer. But yeah, just opportunities to have a clear shot or be in the right position or be confident about what I'm doing. They just don't seem to present themselves as often as you would like. But I hear that's pretty standard here in Victoria, especially with sambar deer. They're pretty crafty critter.
Yeah.
So, but it's just the experience. I'm just doing it more for being out there. I don't care if I don't see a deer or get a deer. It's the whole environment and being out there and combining that with some really good friendships and good food, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm convinced my partner thinks I go hunting to go eat cheese and salami. but no, it's been good being back in New Zealand. I've been twice and bumped 2 deer the first time, which I didn't see. It was in tight, scrubby stuff, and then the second time I went out, I was in a beautiful area, but the wind was absolute carnage. It'd be in your face 1 minute and then over your shoulder the next, and in this beautiful open area and coming up the hill, and sure enough, the wind came over my shoulder and off one went, and you just go, yes, but bugger.
It's mixed emotions, isn't it?
Yeah,
I just find with the sambar that walking through the bush or sitting there and something comes running in, and you've got this crazy intensity and the honking and the aggressiveness of some of the bigger ones. It's I don't know, it's really, really full on.
Yeah,
it's
man.
Great.
The other thing Andy said about is with your spearfishing and surfing, what goes through your head when there's sharks about?
I haven't seen a shark when I'm spearfishing yet. So, but yeah, it's definitely on my mind. Like that's something that you should do. You definitely should do it with somebody else. But I guess for me, I'll do a lot of stuff on my own. And so when I've been out, especially Great Ocean Road in Victoria here, I wouldn't say it's super sharky, but there's definitely some decent sized sharks along that coastline. So it's definitely in the back of my mind at times. And I'm not out there a lot. I haven't really sort of done a lot of spearfishing here. It's the coastline's pretty wild, and I haven't sort of teamed up with anybody yet. That's I've got one guy actually that I'm just sort of linked up with recently, who hopefully I'll get out with. But it's more. I've been doing it more in New Zealand, and I haven't seen any sharks, touch wood, up around Coromandel Peninsula. I know they're there, and it's only a matter of time when you've got bloody fish in the water close to you that potentially something's going to come up and have a look.
Yeah.
So, but it's I think I'm trying to be prepared for it, and understand what's happening with that fear response in your body, and to a degree, depending on how big that shark is, try and control that response, because you're also sending off a signal, an electromagnetic field from your body that indicates your fear response. And you want the opposite. You definitely want to be able to show that you're confident and that you're not afraid, and that you're not going to be intimidated by it. So I'm reading a lot about it from other people's experiences, and trying to create some sort of preparation for being in that situation. But I don't know, I'll have to be there. Have to work out the time. I think it's
my partner Alex's dad said that the same sharks that go into Whangapawa, and I think there's a resident bull shark or tiger shark or something in the lagoon there, but he said the same whites that go past the Mercs and stuff like that that go all the way down to Invercargill through the sound and go all the way past Sydney up to Ballina where I was, and it's like could see the same shark. But yeah, that was definitely a shark hot spot. It was always good when the helicopter flew over and didn't rear its siren at you. You felt good about being in the water. What species do you target in the Coromandel?
Just mainly, snapper, and I don't mind the moki. There's a lot of fish up there that, probably people would class as a second-rate eating fish that I think are pretty decent. Mm-hmm. Some of the cod species. Obviously kingfish. There's a lot of varieties up there. I haven't got a decent kingfish yet, so that's kind of one that's on the top of my list for this summer when I get home. But yeah, look, just there's plenty of variety, and I think they're pretty easy to access. Like, I haven't jumped in and not got enough food for dinner, and things like the kinner as well. I think that's really underrated. It's something that as a chef, there's lots of things you can do with that. You don't have to just crack it open on the rocks and eat it raw. Mm-hmm. There's lots of butters and different sauces that you can make with it. So I try and get a few things that are probably not not as popular, I guess. My parents, when they fish, it's that all they want is snapper. That's the only thing they want to eat, and good scallops, which of course I love those as well. But I think there's a lot of variety. There's a lot of things, and it's more how it's prepared than what it is.
So are you going out on the boat, or are you just jumping?
Yeah, my dad's got a boat. So my dad's got a boat. So he scuba dives. Mm-hmm. So he's always, he's out getting crays and scallops regularly. So yeah, I'll tag along with Dad, and we'll sort of pull up somewhere, and he'll have a dive, and then we'll find somewhere where I can jump in as well. But yeah, it's awesome. I love it. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful up there.
Yeah. Hoping to get up there this summer as well, and might have to stop in by you guys.
For sure. That'd be great.
Yeah, man. Oh well, you're supposed to be going hunting, well, at least out to the farm.
Terrible day, but it's going to be great to get out. I need to get out of the city and get some fresh air, and go for a walk in the bush would be awesome.
Legend. So where do people find you, Kent, and find Modern Pirate?
Modern Pirate on Instagram is modern_pirate, and the website's modernpirate.com.au. Me personally on Instagram, I'm just Kent Mulligan, and I actually set up a code today for your listeners, Stag15. If anybody is interested in getting anything on the website, then they're welcome to punch that code in and use that indefinitely.
Awesome. Cheers, man.
Yeah.
And so what would you like people to take away from our chat, or what would you leave people with as a thought, or whether around health or what? A
couple of thoughts that resonate with me a lot, by two people that I think are amazing people. One of them is the late Charles Poliquin. Something that he said, that I'd heard a long time ago, which really resonates, and it's what you appreciate appreciates. So I think that's something that I really focus on as well, and I think we can all benefit from. Obviously we're all very fortunate. Every day is a blessing. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of amazing people out there, and a lot of inspiration. So I feel, that's one thing. The other thing that's important to me is William Truebridge, the New Zealand freediving champion. A technique that he uses in his deep free dives just reminds himself there's only now, and that's something as well that I find, when I'm stressed, or I feel like my thoughts are getting a little bit ahead of myself, or I'm projecting into the future, I just really try and just pull my mind back in and focus on that, and just I think it's a little technique that's really helpful. Yeah,
Hawke's Bay local as well, and
Is he? Okay.
Well,
that's cool.
His old man actually is not graphic artist. It's a sort of structural artist, and so the house we're in actually has one of the Truebridge lights. They're when you're driving around Havelock North, you see them in pretty much everybody's window. They're these big construction collapsible wooden things that are pretty crazy. And William's a Hawke's Bay.
He's a legend. He's a good guy.
Nice. Oh, well,
Cool.
I'll press stop on this, and yeah, thanks very much, Keith. This is awesome.
Yeah, thanks so much for talk. It's really, really great to catch up, and we'll hopefully we'll link up in New Zealand sometime.
Cheers, man.
All right, cheers, mate. See you.